Everyone.
Morning.
We're going to call this meeting to order. At this time, I would like to read our mission statement. And that is that the Texas State Board of Pharmacy is a leader in protecting the public health of the citizens of Texas, shall uphold quality standards for licensing and facilitate regulation that promotes innovative, multidisciplinary, and collaborative practices and education which produce quality care and positive outcomes. Just a reminder, as far as our announcements go, is that the mics in here, we're using our owl, but they do pick up everything, so kind of be aware of that, they're sensitive. The restrooms are located to the left past the elevators, so be aware of that. And with that, I will also remind everybody that there will be a QR code at the back for CE. Make sure that if you're going to use CE, that you do go ahead and take, use your smartphone and make sure that you sign up that way. And with that, I'm going to ask Nathan to take roll.
Julie's here.
Here.
Suzette Tiarina.
Here.
Donna Montemayor. Present. Lori Hinkie. Here. Rick Fernandez.
Here.
Donnie Lewis.
Here.
Tijani Yokum. Here. Daniel Guerrero. Not present. Bradley Miller.
Here.
Ian Shaw.
Here.
Rick Tisch.
Here.
And on the CE, just remember, you do need to stay for the whole time, so be aware of that. All right, our first item is our minutes. We'll note, board members, that we are looking at the minutes from our February 7th meeting, and both of our virtual meetings, which were on March 1st and March 28th. Those meetings, while virtual, I was present here in Austin. I will entertain if there is a motion or if there are any corrections.
I'll make a motion. All agree.
So we have a motion from Rick and a second from Jimmy. We'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of approval of minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes pass. With that, we have invited John to the table so that he can lead us through all of our rules. And John, if you want to go ahead.
All right. In the rule PDFs that you've been provided, there are bookmarks with links to the lines with edits. Also, for the rules for adoption, you have received copies of the orders and preambles in the OneDrive link that was sent to you, and you also have them on your computers in front of you. So let's start with the rules for adoption. All of the rules up for adoption were proposed at the February 7th, 2023 board meeting, and they were published in the March 17, 2023 issue of the Texas Register. The first ones, C.1.1, amendments concerning internship requirements, and C.1.1.1 regards Rule 283.2 concerning definitions. On lines 110 through 111, regarding the definition of a resident intern, the second requirement of completing a residency program in the state of Texas. This change removes the requirement that the residency program be accredited by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. This was requested by the Texas Society of Health System Pharmacists because it was not necessary for the programs to be accredited, and this was removing an unnecessary hurdle to get pharmacy students into residency programs. There were no written comments received on these amendments. And then the next one we're going to do together is C.1.1.2, which is Rule 283.4 concerning internship requirements. And on line 158 for the student internship and lines 190 and 211 for the extended internship program. Essentially, you don't lose intern status if the individual fails the NAPLEX or the Texas Pharmacy Jurisprudence exam once. With these changes that are proposed for adoption, if you've failed more than once, then the student internship expires or you are no longer eligible for the extended internship program. And the board requested that staff draft these amendments. Also, on line lines 189 through 190. It removes the requirement that the residency program be accredited by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. Again, this was requested by the Texas Society of Health System Pharmacists, removing ASHP accreditation because it was an unnecessary hurdle, and there were no written comments received regarding these amendments.
All right, so we're doing both of these together. I will entertain a motion to adopt. I have a motion to adopt from Lori and a second from Donnie. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Our next one, rule up for adoption is C.1.2. This is regarding Rule 291.121 concerning remote pharmacy services. These changes would allow remote pharmacy services to be provided using an automated pharmacy system to be provided at healthcare facilities regulated under the Texas Health and Safety Code. Chapters 464, which are facilities treating persons with a chemical dependency, and 577, which are private mental hospitals and other mental health facilities. On lines 71 through 72, under the general requirements regarding providing remote pharmacy services, it adds the citations to chapters 464 and 577 of the Health and Safety Code for healthcare facilities regulated under those sections. This essentially expands the list of Health and Safety Code chapters under which remote pharmacy services can be provided. We did receive two comments, written comments. One comment from Angela Babin from the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD. The comment supported the proposed amendments, but also suggested for facilities regulated under Chapter 534 of the Health and Safety Code, such as the Harris Center, to be included in allowing such facilities to provide remote pharmacy services using an automated pharmacy system. These would be community centers, including community-based mental health and intellectual disability services. We also received another written comment from W. Perry Flowers, from Becton Dixon and Company, otherwise known as BD Pixis, in support of the proposed amendments. That was the end of the comments.
All right, thank you, Josh. We do have a number of public members that would like to speak. First, we'll call Angela Babin to the front desk up here. When you come up, if you'll introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Angie Babin, or Angela Babin. I'm with the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD, and we service a large mental health population. And this type of, and you heard my comment just before, and it really meets the mission of this board to try to improve safety in those settings as well. Sometimes that mental health population, the way that they're doing med delivery, gets missed, and really pharmacist involvement would be very helpful in this automated process with pharmacist involvement upfront. So those were my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that setting.
How many facilities do you have in Houston?
In Houston, we have a location that has 5 different residential type units, and then we have 3 additional ones. In one, I guess, address, there's like 5 different ones that would meet this requirement, and then we have 3 additional residential units in that area. That are
And how many
different
people are in
addresses.
those residential units?
We have over 100 patients in the one location, which is the one that we're really considering with this environment. Any other questions?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I believe our next is Brittany Parameter. I'm sure I said that wrong, so please correct me.
Good morning. My name is Brittany Parmentier. I'm a clinical pharmacy specialist in psychiatry at the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD. So I am also asking the board to add Chapter 534, which supports our residential facilities that are in community mental health centers. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions that Angie did not answer.
So are you looking at these for mainly the residential?
Yes, that would be the 100-bed facility that Angie mentioned. That would be where we would like to utilize these automated dispensing devices.
What is the impact today on it? Nothing's done. What's going to happen?
Yeah, so right now, the medications to these facilities are mainly provided through Class A retail pharmacies. And so the patients might get their medications from multiple different retail pharmacies. And what that looks like in our setting is that the nurses have to wrangle medication bottles from multiple different pharmacies. They have to manage the refills themselves. And it's very difficult from a medication providing medications in a safe way to those residents. So that's why adding these automated dispensing services with a pharmacist that can verify them, especially with the medication changes, it would really increase the safety in these types of facilities. Thank you.
And then our final public is Gary Cashtori.
Good morning. My name is Gary Cacciatore. I'm here representing BD Pixis. As you may recall at the last meeting, we were the ones that proposed this rule. We want to thank the board for proposing the rule as we suggested. I just wanted to comment on what the Harris Center is recommending. We do not oppose that whatsoever. We think that these types of systems would actually work well in those types of facilities as well. We just didn't include that in our initial proposal because there's lots of different chapters in the health and safety code. We were going for the chemical treatment facilities and the private mental health facilities. I guess my only request would be that since this rule's already been proposed and it's ready to be adopted, you have the order there. If you want to add that additional chapter, I'd ask that you go ahead and adopt this rule as proposed. I'll defer to the attorneys, but I assume if you amend that rule to add that other chapter, that would be a substantive change that would require reproposing the entire rule and delaying it by 3 to 6 months. So my only request would be that adopt the rule as proposed today to get those 2 facilities in that we initially requested. And if the board so chooses to add the additional chapter, that can be done as an additional proposed rule, I don't know, either at this meeting or at the next meeting. So that'd be my only request. Thank you.
All right, board members. So Gary did lay it out very well. So we do have the ability to adopt the rule as it is. We have the ability to make a proposed change, which would then be substantive, so it would delay the initial part. We can address the staff to add proposed, kind of Gary lined it out, but we'll go forward and then have another proposal come through. So I'll open it up for discussion and ask the question.
I think that this supports patient safety. I would think Internship that we move forward with this as preceptor today and then entertain the additional types of facilities in the near future, as soon as we can.
Now we can do that as is.
We could propose to adopt what we have and then amend for the chapter for the next board meeting, so we don't delay it to start.
Yes,
We can do that. We can try to have the proposal for the next board meeting. The way it works is the adoption would have to be fully gone through before we can submit a proposal. So as long as the timing works out, we can have it for the next board meeting. But if the timing doesn't work, or we have, enough of a comment period after the adoption, we may have to push it to November for it to.
Okay, so current, yeah, so currently we do have a motion to adopt Lori. So we need a second on that.
Second.
Okay, so I'm going to be in, Ian is going to have our second. So the vote will be to adopt as is, and then we'll come back to that proposal. So currently we have a motion and a second to adopt the remote pharmacy services. I can have a vote. All those in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? All right, so that motion carries. So what I'm hearing is that we would like to direct staff to draft a proposal to include facilities such as the Hair Center and the addition of that. Is that correct?
Chapter 534.
And are there any other chapter categorized facilities that we should be including into that? As we're addressing this. I'm just not aware.
Or do we make a rule broad to set all these facilities? Or do we have to wait, or do we have to be
I
specific?
think we have to be specific with the chapters.
Okay. So how do we know, is there a way that we can research and find out specific facilities that need to be added?
We can direct staff of that between now and the next meeting to come back to make sure that, are there any other facilities that we should include? And bring back possible proposed ones. If there's enough time. All right, make sure my phone procedures going. All right, John, it appears that you are on your final. Roll for it.
All right, the next one is C 1.3, which is Rule 295.8 concerning continuing education requirements. Also some grammatical corrections suggested by the Texas Register, and a suggestion by Gary Cacciatore. Clarify that the monitoring controlled substances course requirement does not expire and is not limited to certain license renewals. This requirement is already in the statute, but we don't want to confuse anyone. It's in Health and Safety Code, section 481.07635. So on lines 104 through 109, it requires a pharmacist to complete 2 contact hours related to approved procedures of prescribing and monitoring controlled substances no later than the first anniversary of becoming licensed. And again, this is required by section 481.07635 of the Texas Health and Safety Code. And as I mentioned, there were some grammatical changes, and we did not receive any written comments regarding these amendments.
If I can have a motion to adopt. Ian has made a motion to adopt. Second, John. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, John, if you want to take us through our proposal rules?
Starting with the proposed rules, we're looking at C 2.1. These are amendments, proposed amendments to 283.6 concerning preceptor requirements and the ratio of preceptors to pharmacist-interns. And on lines 13 through 15, it removes the preceptor requirement of having 6 months of residency training if the pharmacy resident is completing a residency program that is accredited by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. The residency program no longer has to be accredited by them. This is related to the change requested by the Texas Society of Health System Pharmacists to not require a pharmacist-interns residency program to be accredited by the ASHP. This change is just to be consistent with the rules that were just adopted this morning. If the residency program no longer needs to be accredited by the ASHP, it is logical that we would no longer require the preceptor to have at least 6 months of training in an ASHP residency program.
I have a motion to propose. Donnie has a motion to propose. Brad, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Our next one is C 2.2. This is the repeal of Rule 291.24 concerning pharmacy residency programs. This rule was adopted as part of a statutory program that no longer exists. The entirety of Subchapter T, Chapter 61 of the Education Code was repealed 6 years ago. We caught this as part of our search to remove references to ASHP accreditation for pharmacist-intern programs. So on lines 7 through 10, you'll see it repeals the requirement that the standard for pharmacy residency programs shall be the standards required by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists Commission on Credentialing.
All right, to the staff attention. We have a motion to propose. Lori made the motion to propose. Ian the second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Our next one is C 2.3. This is regards Rule 291.27 amendments concerning confidentiality. And simply on line 26, it corrects a typographical error regarding the spelling of policies. And that's it.
No longer. All right, do we have a motion to propose? Rick Tisch has made a motion to propose, second. Donnie Lewis has made that second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion
And our last rule for proposal today is C.2.4 regarding Rule 291, 151. These are amendments concerning pharmacies located in a freestanding emergency medical care facility, also known as a Class F pharmacy. And this came from a suggestion from compliance for added clarity that a pharmacist should be verifying a perpetual inventory of controlled substances listed in Schedules 2 through 5 on a weekly basis. This change was again proposed by staff in compliance to ensure that 291-151 continues to mirror Rule 291.76. This amendment makes the same change that the board adopted at the February board meeting concerning 291.76 to clarify that a pharmacist must verify the completeness and reconcile the perpetual inventory of controlled substances. And this is essentially regarding records at Class F pharmacies and the maintenance of records. So on line 532, it adds that a perpetual inventory of controlled substances listed in Schedule 2 through 5 shall be verified by a pharmacist for completeness and reconciled at least once in every calendar week that the pharmacy is open. And next we have our rule review. Behind C.3 is our rule review plan for fiscal year 2022 through 2025. State law requires that you review the rules on a 4-year cycle. And while it requires you review the rules on a 4-year cycle, what you are looking to see is if you need these rules. It is not about the content of them. So for proposal today, we have C.3.1.1. This is for Chapter 291 concerning pharmacies, non-resident pharmacies or Class E's, some sections there. And some sections under C.3.1.2, some sections of Chapter 295 concerning pharmacists.
All right, again, this is not content, just whether or not these sections remain. Do I have a motion? Suzette has made a motion, second. Donnie has seconded. All those in favor, any opposed? All right, it is my understanding that Amazon is prepared to go early, so we're going to go ahead to our next agenda item, which is the discussion of possible action concerning our pilot project. And this one.
So we have our representatives from Amazon.
Morning.
And Amazon, we're actually going to let y'all go first.
I'm sorry?
We're going to let y'all go first.
Well, good, that's great, because we'll maybe get an earlier flight home, so thank you. So good morning, everyone, members of the board, staff. My name is Dan Luce. I'm here helping Amazon with this request for the pilot. I'm a former board member in Wisconsin for 8 years, currently with a consulting firm called Catazone, Luce & Mennigan. So you may have heard Carmen Catazone from NABP and Tom Mennigan from APHA. So our little firm is out there trying to see what we can do to help folks. So when we were working with Amazon and they proposed, coming to Texas, I said, well, the good news is the Texas Board of Pharmacy is usually very thoughtful and pretty responsive to having proposals made. So we worked very closely with Eamon Briggs and the board council to say, we want to come in, we want to be good citizens of Texas. We want to make sure you understand what they're trying to do with the pilot. It's all about patient safety, privacy, and so we brought the experts along today to kind of talk about that. So Bobby, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
My name is Bobby Lamontagne. I'll be the pharmacist in charge for the College Station Pharmacy near the College Station.
And then Amanda?
Amanda Armistead, I'm on the Amazon Public Policy team. I primarily support Primary, which is our drug delivery service.
So what we thought we'd do today was, and we understand that the committee has made a recommendation, that it's a positive pilot and we'd be interested in improving that. So we're hoping that that goes well. What we want to do is answer all your questions today and make sure we've really done a thorough job of making sure you understand the pilot. But we don't want to waste your time and go through, a lot of slides. And so we made it very concise. Hopefully we can get through this and again, answer any questions you have and make sure you understand that, again, the group understands reporting, the pilot process, making sure that, it's really about patient safety. And the big thing is compliance, right? If we can put the right medication in the hands of the right patient more quickly, there may be some advantages from a advocacy, from a good medication care. So with that, I understand you have the slides in front of you. Is that correct? Okay. Our first slide is talking about prescription drone delivery service. So with that.
So numerous studies cite
Time out for a second.
Sure.
So where are the slides located? Yes.
I think we have the pilot project petition. I don't see those slides.
It's just a petition, get the letter.
Okay.
I mean, there are pictures in the petition, but
So we had hoped to present this today to everybody. Yeah, we had hoped that was included in your packet, of course, not knowing what's included in your packet. There is a 5-slide presentation that we put together.
I didn't receive that. I don't know. It was released, so there must have been a missed opportunity there. I apologize.
Not a problem. If you're,
Describe.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah, we do have
pictures that, we do the pictures from the
With the pictures of
the delivery
Yeah.
via drone, the recommendation, so maybe you can.
yeah, well, we put together 5 slides that really talked about who we are, what the actual pilot is, and I'm going to let the guys use their best descriptive process here, a little bit of theater to give you what's on the slides, talk a little bit about that, and then we'll gladly obviously follow up with, getting you copies of all that. So it's a 4 or 5 slides. The first one, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, so this is just really talking about what the prescription drone delivery service is and kind of the purpose behind our pilot proposal. So numerous studies cite time and geographic constraints as ultimately impacting medication adherence that ultimately diminishes patient outcomes. So to address these constraints, Amazon Pharmacy and Primary are requesting to pilot a drone delivery service in College Station, Texas, in order to connect patients with the health care that they need and to ultimately promote adherence and improve patient outcomes. So under this drone delivery service, all drone deliveries will be carried out by Primary, which is a common carrier with a Part 135 operator certificate that is authorized to operate by the Federal Aviation Administration. So that authorization was approved by the FAA in December of 2022 by demonstrating that our drones can safely and effectively deliver to customers. So Amazon Pharmacy believes that drone delivery offers a safe and secure delivery method that employs rigorous chain of custody technologies and is subject to significant regulatory oversight. Amazon Pharmacy will deliver medications via traditional vial fills as well as unit of use medications. But it's also important to note that no controlled substances or cold chain medications will be delivered to customers via drone. From operational specifics of the program, so eligible customers are customers who, 1, live in the delivery radius of the drones, 2, are signed up for drone delivery via Amazon.com, 3, are signed up with Amazon Pharmacy and have an eligible prescription for delivery via drone. And they also live in a location that Primary has determined to be a safe delivery location, which is.
Yeah, kind of stuff. You want to just continue the safe location, how that's determined?
Yeah, absolutely. So if a customer is interested in receiving drone deliveries, and then for this program, step beyond that, pharmacy deliveries, the Primary team actually comes to their home and surveys their delivery location, which typically today and in the College Station context is usually a backyard. That's where customers have told us that they prefer for their deliveries to be made. So the primary team surveys the backyard and makes sure that it's eligible. So that means that there's a space that's a clearing essentially that's large enough. There's not trees or clotheslines or anything like that that might be in the way. And if they are deemed eligible, then they receive a delivery marker, which looks like kind of a big QR code essentially. That's provided to them, and then that is specific to that customer. And that's how the drone knows that it's making, part of the way the drone knows that it's making the right delivery to the right customer.
So we thought that was very important to make sure that everybody understood that it's patient-specific. They have to qualify, doesn't get dropped, in a driveway in front of an apartment building, that there's criteria specific to making sure it's the right patient, right medication, right time.
So all orders that are placed for drone delivery will be processed and fulfilled by the College Station pharmacy, where they're ultimately packed into secure packaging. Those packages are manually transferred to the primary handoff point, which is located in the same facility where they're ultimately loaded into the drones. And then once the delivery has been made, the customers will be immediately notified that the delivery has arrived, and that's consistent with the notification that all Amazon Pharmacy customers receive regardless of delivery method.
So again, Bobby, one thing that's important too to remember, chain of custody, right? From a board perspective, it's built in an Amazon Pharmacy, taken to the drone by an Amazon employee and loaded by Amazon. So the chain of custody is all within that same business group and all within Amazon.
And I'll pick it up from here just to talk about the primary service a little bit more generally. So like Bobby said, primary is authorized to operate by the FAA or the Federal Aviation Administration. We got that Part 135 certificate he mentioned in August of 2020 actually, and we got the authorizations and approvals necessary to operate in College Station late last year. And we launched that service in December of 2022. So we've been up and running in College Station for a couple of months. And the reason we received that as approval is because we demonstrated that we can safely operate in communities and safely make deliveries to our customers. So that is largely attributable to primary sensitive voice technology, which we think is an industry-leading technology to ensure that the drone navigates safely to its destination, which is of course the customer's home, and then back to the primary facility in College Station. And all along the way, it's avoiding obstacles, including unexpected obstacles, and that ensures the safety of people, pets, property, things like that. In terms of operational parameters, the drones only operate during daylight hours and also in favorable weather conditions. And we use a multi-verification system to confirm the accuracy of the delivery location, and I already talked about that a little bit. So that means that the drone follows a predetermined path from the takeoff pad at the primary facility to the customer's home and then reverses course. And finally, we'll only deliver a package, as I mentioned, if it recognizes that customer-specific delivery marker. But in addition to that, it also won't make the delivery if it doesn't make it safe. So again, that sensitive voice technology will recognize if something unexpected is in a delivery location. So in the time that, since a delivery has been ordered, if something enters the delivery space, a child is running through, a dog, even something stationary like a bicycle, the drone will sense that and it will say it's not safe to make this delivery, and it will not drop the package and will instead return to the primary facility.
So if there's an actual person, who's an adult in the backyard, is they're gonna say, I can't?
Correct. Yep, absolutely.
Do we have to have that QR code in the back?
Yes, so that QR code has to be there for the drone to recognize that it's safe to make that delivery. And so the customer places the marker in their backyard when they make a.
So the last picture, there's a big QR.
So what happens if, obviously in Texas, we have bipolar weather. So if you have a tornado, large gust of wind, rain, how does that affect the mat if the mat gets blown, or if my dog starts playing with the mat? How does that work in terms of the drone recognizing that?
So I'll take the second one first because I think the answer is different in those two scenarios. Okay. So if the dog were to pick up the mat and run away with it, then it wouldn't recognize that the mat was there and it wouldn't make the delivery. On the weather aspect, I mentioned we only operate in favorable weather conditions. So if there is weather that's in the area, predicted in the area, the service won't be available. So if you're an onboarded customer and you go onto their website, it won't show you that option if the weather conditions don't permit for it.
And if let's say a tornado blows my mat away, am I allowed to get a new mat?
Yes, we would work with you on that. Absolutely. Yeah.
delivery miles?
So today it's about 4 miles from the delivery station.
And what happens if they can't?
So if the medication returns to the pharmacy and is undeliverable, we will contact the patient and coordinate a delivery method to be able to get the medication to the customer in a timely manner.
And what happens if it's 120 degrees?
We won't be operating. That would be those extreme circumstances.
It's
So the
awesome.
service wouldn't be available in those cases.
So greater than 90 degrees.
Is that your limit? So how do you, in Texas, it's gonna be hot all summer that way. How do you just stop servicing during those, or go in the mornings?
If it falls outside of those parameters.
And I think that's important questions because, right, this is a pilot, and I think we're looking for learnings. And we're trying to make sure that, as things develop, that we do that reporting back to you and say, here's what we discovered, that, there is only a small window in the morning before it gets too hot to deliver, that I think those are gonna be valuable for everybody as we kind of develop the process and the pilot and the program going forward. So again, the commitment here is to be Amazon good citizens of Texas and make sure and work with you on the pilot, do the right reporting to make sure that you understand everything that's happening. And if things go awry for some reason unknown, we'll report that back. But I really think that that's the intent of this request, is to say that we think this technology is really important. We think it could be very helpful for a lot of patients. I think, my kids, were sick, and I'd have to leave and, go to the pharmacy, earache, the doctor calls it in, it's back in my house, and then an hour later. I mean, that's pretty remarkable technology. But it's got to be safe, effective, and it's got to be something that you bless. So we're here today asking for an approval for the pilot, get that started, get it done, get the testing in, get all the things to make sure it works correctly, as we have explained. And again, the last slide was just talking about the actual statute 291 that talks about delivery. I don't want to belate that because that's obviously your statute. It just this is why we're requesting the pilot. But at this point, I'd like to really open it up for other questions, and then.
I have a question.
Sure.
In terms of medication that needs consulting on, how does that work? If, I'm a patient and I have a medication that someone's at the pharmacy needs consulting, how does that work?
So similar with all of our medication deliveries from Amazon Pharmacy, whether it's drone or otherwise, we have customer service available, including pharmacists available 24/7 to counsel and answer any questions that you may have. Additionally, we'll be able to route questions if the customer has questions about drone specific components, things like that. I can route you to the appropriate people as well.
If I'm delivered a medicine, I can call you guys to consult with my medication on how I'm supposed to take it, by mouth or syringe or whatever. Correct.
But Bob, if you have let's say it's a high needs patient, delivering a drug that has the high needs, you can actually reach out to the patient before it's delivered.
Absolutely.
What about cost? What does the patient, is there an upcharge for drone delivery?
No. If you're a Prime customer, it's just like any other delivery. It's included in your Prime subscription.
Good question. How many of these are enough operators? One, or how many drones do you think could be used?
So today we're operating just a handful, but we expect that to scale as we ramp up operations and get FDA approval to operate, to deliver to our customers.
So what states are those drone deliveries in?
Texas and California. So we launched our first 2 delivery locations in the US in December, one in College Station and one in a town in California.
And has the California one started?
Yes, they launched at the same time, but there's no pharmacy operation there. It's just.
I think your question was pharmacy delivery.
Correct.
So not drug delivery, but where currently are you doing pharmacy delivery?
Drone specific pharmacy delivery? Currently not.
This would be the first.
Yeah, this would be the
Sorry.
Yes, no, but I'm saying is there'd only be a handful of drones out at delivery potentially at once, or one at a time, or?
So no more than 4 drones operate at a time. We have 4 different operating sectors. So that's the maximum that would be operating at any given time, but it will fluctuate with demand.
I know that all of the drones are registered and.
Yes,
FAA
absolutely.
and all that.
Yes.
Is there a need to have language saying that the drones will comply with all current FAA rules and local ordinances? I know you have approval, but is that something we should consider putting there?
You file a flight plan with the FAA.
Well, I think there's just some basic FAA compliance that has to be in a certain space that you have to be in, right?
Yes.
And obviously, we're assuming that's going to be done, but is there a language that we need to put in there saying that the drones during their use are going to comply with all FAA rules and any local ordinances? That might be.
We always comply with all FAA rules.
Yeah.
I mean,
Certainly are, yeah.
For example, if you were sending a medication to someone near an airport, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Correct. It depends on, I mean, all of our flight paths have to be approved by the FAA, so.
Yeah, there's a certain feet that have to be.
Yes.
But the rules will be up to us,
No, I mean, that's a good opinion.
Yeah. So I would think that, you know, because the FAA is so regulatory, that it would be a little redundant if you put it in yours. I mean, you certainly can, but I think that the oversight we've received so far from the FAA has been, so I'm not involved with the day-to-day she is, but I'd say that that covers you. But again, it's your rules and your choice, but I think it'd be redundant.
How many medications per drone? Are there several deliveries or just one, or how does that work?
So ultimately, the delivery has to fit, you know, you can essentially get whatever will fit into the size parameters and as well as the weight parameters. So if our system will recognize automatically as you're adding things to your cart, whether or not it conforms to those size and weight parameters. And if it does, then it will offer drone delivery as an option at checkout. If it exceeds the size and weight components, it will not offer it as an option at the end.
and it is just one person at a time.
So what time frame are you looking to test the project?
So ultimately, Amazon Pharmacy is open to running this pilot as long as it's deemed necessary by the Board of Pharmacy. So ultimately, we're here to propose the pilot and work with the board to, you know, to where everyone is pleased with the progress and moving forward.
What data points are you planning to capture in the pilot?
So essentially, you know, from a reporting standpoint, it looks like the board is wanting quarterly reports on, you know, number of deliveries, patient-reported errors or concerns, things like that. So
I think it would be good to also capture those that were unable to be delivered through this technology.
Absolutely, and that
If there were any
will.
delays that resulted because of that.
And I think Megan's gonna line out all of our recommendations.
I think we all need to feel good about that.
Will we also be capturing or sharing user experience, end user experience, their feedback on how it went and perception?
So I can't speak necessarily to that point. I'm not.
So for the service more broadly, we do have a customer feedback mechanism that pharmacy customers would be able to utilize, just like non-pharmacy customers.
So what's the altitude drones fly at?
So we're authorized to fly up to 400 feet above ground level. That's our general authorization. The actual flight, or the actual altitude that we fly will depend on the flight path, but generally we'll be lower than that, 200 feet maybe, but again.
So it's not that, okay. And then why just a 4-mile radius? Why not expand? It just seems like you're covering more of a populated area.
So today our click to deliver promise is within an hour. So this is truly a last mile delivery solution. This will be one of the fastest ways that you can get a package from Amazon anywhere. So by design, the distance is intended to be very short because we want to have deliveries.
So Bobby, in the meantime, your current pharmacy is delivering through standard delivery. Is that a UPS truck? Is that a delivery man that you have hired, or what is your standard delivery?
So here in Austin, we utilize multiple delivery services. We use UPS. We also use Amazon drivers and things like that.
Is there a physical location that somebody can come and pick something up in the event it were to be delayed and was anticipated to arrive via drone?
So we'll maintain a separate counseling space on site for, you know, if a patient wants to come and get counseling there. But as far as picking up a package, they wouldn't be able to come to the site and physically pick up their package.
Thank you.
So the one in College Station, that's a pharmacy.
It will be. So we submitted an application for a Class A pharmacy in College Station that, you know, we're working through the application process currently.
So just to make sure we're clear, so the concurrent request for a pharmacy and request for a drone, they're trying to sort of line those up so that when they open the pharmacy, they can use drone delivery as part of that service.
Conversation's been made, that's right,
Yeah.
that's where it is.
That's where it will be.
And you chose, College Station is a location because you have a warehouse facility there,
A primary facility there.
primary.
It's a primary specific facility.
And your goal is long-term to have them in other facilities in Texas or just that one?
I mean, we intend to open additional primary locations next year in different parts of the country, and then we plan to scale from here on out. That's just speaking for the primary drone delivery service.
What's the size of the drone? The pictures are a little deceiving. I mean, the thing looks huge.
So it weighs about 80 pounds, and the maximum payload is 5 pounds, and it's about 6 feet across. And part of the reason that it is the size and the weight that it is because of those safety capabilities and redundancies that are built into it, including that sensibility system.
So we mentioned what the upper temperature was, what's our lower range?
That is a question I'll be able to follow up with you on. I'm not sure what the bottom end parameters are for that.
You said 9 degrees, right?
Yeah, 9 degrees high. We kind of need to know that lower. And the patient does have to be home for this to be delivered.
The patient has to have the delivery mat placed out, and then they'll be notified when it arrives. I don't know that it necessarily requires them being home. If they go and place their mat out and then place the order, it's, they're expecting the delivery within the hour time frame to be there.
But the potential could be that it could be delivered and just sit in the backyard.
Yeah.
Until they arrive home that evening or whatever.
It's potentially, yes.
So the procedure really is, if they know they're gonna get it, when they put the mat out. If they're not, they take the mat in. Is that what you're telling customers?
Having the mat out essentially says, I am prepared to accept this delivery.
Is it required that it has to be fenced? I know you said that it could be like front.
No.
All right, any other questions?
Just one question. When someone wants to apply to have the delivery by drone, how long does it take for to submit an application for your consultants to come out to review it and say, okay, you're a good candidate or you're not? How long does that process take?
A day, maybe it can happen very quickly. If somebody's interested, our team is essentially standing by to make sure that they can go out and survey the yard and turn that around very quickly.
I think the answer is they're anxious to get learnings, they're anxious to get people started on this thing, and they're anxious to work with Texas to make sure it works well and protects the citizens, but also has some real advantages as far as getting the right medication in the hands of the right patient as quickly as possible.
One last question on the delivery. Is it primarily for single-family homes? Or, what if you're in an apartment building or condo? How would you deliver that way?
Yeah, so today the customers that we're authorized to deliver to are single family.
Residential only, not commercial.
Correct.
Turn over to Megan on.
So a task force of Julie, Mary Martha, Iman, and myself reviewed Amazon's petition for a pilot project. Our recommendation is behind the tab on D.1, and you can see we do recommend approving the pilot project with certain conditions. The recommendation lays out the goal of the project is to minimize time and geographic constraints that could negatively impact academic adherence. It shows the person responsible would be Robert Fontaine, and the location would be Amazon Pharmacy 008 in College Station once they obtain a pharmacy license. It then lays out the rules to be waived during the pilot. So as you know, our current board rule 291.9 only allows for delivery of prescription drugs by a pharmacy employee, common carrier, or U.S. mail. This rule waiver would create C, which would allow for delivery of prescription drugs to a patient's residence by an unmanned aircraft systems or drones, with the exception of controlled substances, sterile compounded preparations, and other drugs requiring storage below a cold temperature. It would require policies and procedures for delivery, including training on delivery, packaging, verification of recipient and delivery address, confidentiality, secure transfer, counseling, remediation of errors and or adverse events, and record keeping. Under packaging of prescription drugs for delivery, it provides that drugs shall be packaged to maintain confidentiality, prevent adulteration, and maintain integrity of the drugs. Under confidentiality, it provides that a pharmacist shall verify that the packaged drug is addressed correctly. Under security, it provides that the pharmacy shall document each change in the chain of custody of the drug and maintain that information in the pharmacy's data processing system, and that the pharmacy must ensure the delivery is made to a reasonably secure location that minimizes the opportunity for unauthorized access. In a summary of the pilot project, you can see Robert Ryan King will provide quarterly reports to the board, which at a minimum would include the number of prescriptions delivered to patients, number of patients utilizing the drone delivery option, a current list of eligible prescription drugs, any errors, complaints, or adverse events, and the distance of deliveries. The timeframe for the project will be no more than 18 months from the start of the project, and the project must start within 30 days of the issuance of the pharmacy license or 120 days of the board's approval of the project, and the board must be notified in writing of the start of the project. That is the recommendation.
So can you make, I'd like to make a couple of recommendations for additional data points to be captured. I think one of them should be the number of deliveries that were not successful, so the time that the attempt was made, either from a weather standpoint or whatever, that this did not work. And I also think the time for bill to delivery should be captured.
Can you say that again?
Time from the time that it's billed to the time of delivery. And I think we need to have a comparator for other things like delivery to make sure that, I mean, our goal in this is pretty cool, and people are going to be looking to Texas to see how successful it was as we expand it throughout the nation. And I want to make sure that we're really gathering the data that makes it, that sells it or doesn't, if it is the right good piece of technology. I also think we should have some documentation of counseling, but that should be a requirement.
As part of the quarterly reports, because it would still, all of the rules regarding counseling would still apply.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think we should require evidence of that as part of this, again, as this becomes, who everybody is going to look for this technology. I would think Amazon would want that. They would want to be able to demonstrate that, assure everybody that counseling does occur and it did occur every time, or, you know. So, those are some additional things I think we should.
A couple other things, I think, cancellation rate maybe, so we can determine is it something that's reliable, that patients can reasonably request, and how often is it actually delivered, to see if it's, successful, relatively speaking. And yeah, I think there is something for maybe some commentary on end user experience, just, feedback from patients, so we can gather as they go through the service that was valuable to them and how it impacted their health and whatnot.
Sure, and under the summary of the pilot project, one of the reporting parameters is any errors, complaints, or adverse events. So,
I think they're saying they want to hear the positives.
Yeah, when it's a good stuff.
Deposit.
Yeah, because I think
You
that's,
said there was a customer service feedback survey?
We do, there's, for the service more generally, we have a customer feedback mechanism, so we'll certainly utilize that.
Is that what you're wanting, Brett?
yeah, I think it's good to know how they look, not just when there's a problem.
I think it'd be interesting to know how many are actually stolen. I mean, you got a box
That's an
up.
error.
That's under the,
Yeah, so any errors would be missed deliveries.
Missed delivery, it would be delivered. It would be delivered.
Well, it would still be an error in the process.
Well, are you saying that the Amazon checks off saying it was delivered?
We delivered
So
it.
that their communication will say, check, we delivered it to Donnie's house.
Yeah.
But then the patient comes outside,
And it's
doesn't see
gone.
it because it's.
The neighbor kid jumps over the fence,
Okay.
and he saw it, delivered. Whatever, I just think that'd be interesting intel to know if there were any stolen.
Well,
Or taken.
it's a problem for all delivery porch pilots, so we'll have to figure out how we.
Resign up anyone high channel.
Yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned what it delivers, that's an hour, within an hour, that would deliver?
Yes, that's the delivery.
So within that hour, if I say I want it,
You'll have it within.
so the
the time we're tracking is from that time.
I think that the benefits outweigh the risk here, they're actually very positive.
So if the product isn't available, like say I want something that you can't stock, what happens then? Just becomes, that's not available for me at the end of the hour, you're gonna go regular delivery.
Well, ultimately, if a medication's not delivered, our customer service team will coordinate with the patient to let them know about the back order. If it's not available at the pharmacy, I mean, we'll look at, alternatives.
All right, so I'm gonna give you feedback and then we'll see about the motion. On your petition, I mean, I think one of the concerns, and I think that, you know, it was brought up, you know, Donnie said they were kids jumped over the fence. I would not have kids running through a medication to go pick up the box. I think it probably raises a red flag and a risk. And I think that when we were going through the pilot, that was our #1 concern. I mean, how cool is that 6-foot drone dropped into the neighbor's yard? You know, we're gonna go check out the box. So I would use a different picture since we're thinking about private children. And do we have a motion?
One more comment, real quick. Back to this regulation and ordinances, do we have any language that we need to protect ourselves with, saying that it must be in compliance with, or that, I don't want to
The
pilot.
concern is about federal regulations. Amazon is required to follow those.
Yeah,
Without us.
And then there's no local ordinances that other problems.
Again, I think it would be on Amazon. We're just saying that under our rules, we're allowing this pilot waiver. We're not saying that we're waiving anything else other than our specific rules. If they're trying to make sure they're not breaking any city ordinances or federal or state laws outside of our scope.
But in terms of and maybe this is a question for you guys, in terms of the delivery, if a package of the medication needs to be cooled for a certain
That was the thing, is that they're not gonna do any
Cold chain stuff's not delivered.
No control substance.
Does the drone have the capability of monitoring the temperature within the compartment?
So that was a really
Did you
good
hear
question.
that?
That's a great question.
Does the drone have the capability of monitoring the temperature within the compartment where the box is stored?
You might share what I just asked, so they can hear about the standard packages.
Okay, so wait.
Sorry.
Okay, too many questions. Okay, so ask your question and then, yeah, let's make sure that whatever questions down here that we all hear.
To follow up on Jenny's question, do we have an estimate of what that temperature normally is? Inside the drone, I mean, I'm sure that could be measured.
So prior to launching the drone delivery, we'll be validating temperature controls based on URAC standards prior to doing that. And then Primary is engaged in extensive analysis of drone performance in certain temperatures, and that's where that kind of 90 degrees number came from. So we will be going and validating prior to delivery.
And you'll provide that to us as part of our data collection, is that correct?
We can certainly.
I think it's important, though, you're accredited, so I think that's the accreditation states that you comply with packaging. I don't think it's necessary to do accreditation.
So why don't you ask?
Yeah, so the question I asked, is Amazon currently shipping via drone, just normal packages, everyday packages? You said yes, since December. So they go back to they're complying with FAA, things like that, they're already shipping their own packages.
On their application for the pharmacy, what is that, they've already applied, right?
I believe they've already applied for the license hasn't been issued.
Okay. Okay, is that process?
It's in the process, so it should be receiving getting all the paperwork and it should be happening soon. But, you know. The license you would apply for?
Yes, correct. March 10th.
Is there anything different on the boxes or the packaging for a medication versus any other?
What's the pleasure of the board? Do we have a motion? Do we? Your motion
Is to set this pilot program
with the changes.
With it, yeah.
It's added at that point.
So we have a motion to, move the pilot forward, which is a request made by the board. Give a second, Tommy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Real quickly, I want to make sure I have all the additional ones. So in addition, when we're gonna do a final report, we'll send that, and we'll add these to the list that we have for the minimum report requirements. So we're adding unsuccessful deliveries, time from when the prescription is filled to delivery, and then documentation of counseling, cancellation rate, and feedback on end user experience. Do you want temperature? Okay, and temperature inside the drum.
And I'm not saying necessarily that every delivery, but just as a way to validate that when it's 90 degrees outside, the temperature inside the drum isn't 140.
Right, so the drum per day is like
I'd have to go back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it very much.
All right. Oh, yes, Tim. So we are going to take, it is now, my clock's still, I don't know what it is, but they don't, I have it, it's 10:01. And so we will take, say, 10 minutes recess, and we'll come back at 10:11. have trouble hearing him speak, so we need to kind of speak up a little bit.
Okay.
So I'll just go ahead and throw that out there. We are gonna go a little out of agenda, just, for a moment here, so we're gonna go down to F.3, and I'll ask Jeff Jones and Daniel Graves to come forward. They are our internal audit group. You can go ahead and have the gentlemen introduce yourselves and give us your report. The good thing is that we are currently not within their audit, they're gonna get their results, but, overall, we're making all of our performance measures that we're required to, so it's a good thing.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm Dan Graves. I'm the agency's internal auditor. I'm a partner with Weaver, your outsourced internal audit firm. And with me, I have our manager, Doug Jones. I will be presenting our report over the enforcement audit, which was the one internal audit that was on the internal audit plan this year. And Jeff will talk a little bit about the follow-ups for the compliance and the peer assistance program. And then just as a matter of status, we are going through the licensing and renewal follow-up. So licensing and renewals was the audit we performed last year. And this year we are following up on the open findings from that audit. That is in progress. We are planning that one now, and we will execute those follow-up procedures in June. So that will be forthcoming in the next meeting.
You have a copy of this, so you can, under F3.
So yeah, on F3, so you'll see our summary status report. As I said, the enforcement audit we performed this year, we completed that in February. As a matter of report ratings, we do issue a rating on the report. We have a 3-tier rating system of strong, satisfactory, and unsatisfactory. This report received a satisfactory rating, as well as the 3 objectives within the report received a satisfactory rating. We did have 5 findings. 2 of those were high risk rated and 3 were moderate risk rated. Mostly the findings center around documentation, supporting documentation, and then some timely completion of some of the procedures that were in your manual and your agency guidance. And then there was 1 that centered around user access within the Versa system. We found when we did the user access review from our standpoint, we identified several users that had user access that needed to be corrected as part of our procedures. If there are any questions, I'll cover any specifics you'd like, but I'll look for questions on that. Jeff?
Hello, I'm Jeff. I'm a manager with Weaver, and I'm going to be reviewing our peer assistance program follow-up procedures that we performed recently. This internal audit actually was originally performed by your predecessor internal auditor, Garza and Gonzalez and Associates. We inherited this, and we are performing follow-up procedures over it. There was only 1 finding that we performed follow-up procedures over, and it was a low-risk finding as well. And essentially, this finding is going to stay open for another year. We believe that it's going to be remediated next year by the 3rd quarter, 2023 actually. If there are any questions on that one, I can go over that one in further detail.
I'd say that the 1 finding, the only thing I'll add is the 1 finding relates to reporting of participation in the peer assistance program. That comes through PRN, through the agency, and then is reported to the LBB. There were a few discrepancies in some of the numbers and the timing. It was reported 1 quarter and then was corrected in the next quarter. So there's already been some corrective measures put in place, but to have a repeatable sound system, management feels like in 3rd quarter of fiscal 2023 that will be complete. So that will be added to the plan for next year for us to follow up on that as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, with the audit process that we put in place, cropped out so that we know that our processes are working.
That is correct, yes. So reported incorrectly in 1 quarter, and then some new procedures were put in the next quarter of management's audit of those numbers, and they found the correction and made it. So it wasn't anything we found, we just identified that process hadn't been put in place for long enough for us to give a thumbs up that it was fully remediated yet. So we showed it as partially remediated, and that'll be on next year's plan.
Well, we really thank you for all that you've done. I know that there was a lot of meetings back and forth for us to, to allow us to make some adjustments, so we really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate it, and management and the team at the board was really helpful, always giving us the documentation that we needed, so we appreciate their collaboration and efforts. The only other thing I have is we do present a summary page, so on the second page of our status report, you'll see a table on the back, and that's just a table of the audits that are open with the findings count for you by risk rating. So you'll see the original open, another set of columns for what are closed, and then the total findings that are open. So we have 9 total now, 1 from 2021, 3 from 2022 that we have not yet followed up on. That's this year. That's the next follow-up we'll do, and then the 5 from this year's audit. So it's kind of give you a vision as to what internal audit has as part of our open items list. Thank you very much.
All right, and with that, please go to F.2. We have Caroline and then Phil come up and solve We do have one point of business, thank you, Caroline. That is that we do need to approve the audit. So do I have a motion to approve the audit? I want a motion from Donnie. I have a second from Bradley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
All right, so this is F.2, and F.2.1 is board staff's chart of the total number of participants in the peer assistance program. The top chart is the number of participants over the last 3 fiscal years, and the bottom chart is detailing the participants entered in the program by licensee type and participation, as these are either a volunteer participant with the peer assistance program or a board order participant with peer assistance program. For the first quarter, those number of individuals that were entered in the program, and then those individuals that entered the program in the second quarter of fiscal year 23, for an ongoing total throughout the fiscal year. So currently there's been 97 participants total in the program this year.
You want to explain that?
Sure, I can explain. So this does, you'll notice some asterisks, and this is what we just heard from the internal auditors, and that was identified. There was an underreporting of the participants by PRN. For the pharmacist, there was 1 missing, and then the student monitored by PRN. So these are not board order participants, but these are volunteer participants, and they're just underreported. But during that audit process, we were reconciling numbers. We identified that there was discrepancy there. It's difficult because those participants are confidential. So we're talking about them, we're talking about numbers, and so it's hard to identify individuals with just a name. And then often they flip between the two, so it also creates some little confusion, yeah. So thankfully we have a great relationship with Raquel and her team, and we're able to reconcile that, and we're working through additional processes to help on both ends. Yes, yeah, it's been a good thing.
Okay, sure. Good morning, everyone, Madam President, members of the board and staff. My name is Raquel Liel, and I am the director for the Professional Recovery Network. And I'm here this morning to present PRN's report for the third quarter of the current fiscal year. PRN continues to receive a steady number of referrals regarding potentially impaired pharmacists and pharmacy students, and compliance by current participants is acceptable, and all concerns regarding public safety have been reported to the Texas State Board of Pharmacy.
PRN has had many exciting program awareness opportunities this past quarter. On January 30th, PRN presented and spoke to the PRN students, to the P1 students at the University of Texas College of Pharmacy to discuss problematic substance use and share mental health and substance abuse statistics for healthcare professionals in the U.S. At this presentation, we also talked about the services that PRN provides, as well as resources for healthcare professionals who might be in need of these type of struggles. On February 21st, PRN spoke to the student pharmacist members of the Texas Tech University Hodge School of Pharmacy's APHA ASP chapter. At this presentation, PRN discussed why healthcare professionals have a higher rate than the general public to become impaired, showed statistics for healthcare professionals struggling with substance abuse challenges, as well as talked about the types of support that PRN offers. And we look forward to continuing to work with pharmacy schools across Texas to bring awareness to the program. PRN Spring Seminar is scheduled for Saturday, May 27th, 2023 at Norris Conference Center here in Austin, and PRN participants are required to attend these seminars as stated in their support agreement. Our speaker will be Corbin Bighart, LCDCI, who has worked in the substance abuse field for over 7 years. Mr. Bighart began his journey at the last resort and has served in executive and leadership capacities since 2018. His leadership experience, combined with his own personal recovery and education, has given opportunities to work with other professionals and families struggling with addiction, recovery, suicide prevention, and relapse. Mr. Bighart is extremely passionate about using data to better understand his clients and how it relates to efficacy and treatment outcomes. His topic, Finding and Maintaining Recovery as a Healthcare Professional, will talk about his own personal experiences with finding recovery, relapsing after 7 years of sobriety while serving in a healthcare leadership capacity, and finding recovery again while navigating the challenges related to working in healthcare and early sobriety. He uses his own recovery and relapse professional experience and education as a licensed chemical dependency counselor to provide guidance, tips, skills, and practices to guide and support other healthcare professionals navigating a similar path. PRN is scheduled to hold our biannual advisory board committee meeting the morning of the spring seminar, and this meeting is scheduled for Saturday, May 27th, and it'll be held via Zoom. LBP numbers for this quarter, September 1st, 2022 to February 28th, 2023, were initially submitted to TSBP on March 10th, 2023, with a resubmission with corrections on March 27th, 2023. LBP numbers include all licensed pharmacists and pharmacy students enrolled in the PRN program, and they are as follows: 4 volunteer pharmacy students, 1 board-ordered pharmacy student, 30 volunteer pharmacists, and 39 board-ordered pharmacists. And last, you'll find on the report, our PRN expenditure report for the current fiscal year showing our financials. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions I can have answered? Okay.
Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
All right, at this time in the agenda, we'll go back to E. Our first thing on E is E.1, and that's our report on the compounding advisory group. There have been no meetings, and at this time, we're going to thank the individuals on that group for their service and for all that they did for the board. And we'll talk a little bit later in the agenda about where we go from here. So with that, I'm going to ask Ms. Mother to come forward, and we'll go to E.2.
Good morning, members of the board. So for the Prescription Monitoring Program Advisory Committee meeting, there was actually not a meeting held this quarter. The next meeting is scheduled for June the 1st. And for the report on the Interagency Prescription Monitoring Program Work Group, there was not a meeting this quarter. Right now, we're looking at scheduling a meeting for the summer after the conclusion of the legislative session.
That's after will include them. They move in the audit, so it's better time. All right. I'm gonna wrap back a little bit. All right, if we can ask Ian and Ruben.
Good morning, everyone. First, I wanted to announce that we have hired a budget analyst. Ruben Liao has a lot of state experience in budget, and we are very happy that he has agreed to join the board. He started about 2 weeks ago. He's getting settled, learning about our agency and our financials. If you will look at agenda item F.1.1, you will see a review of expenditures through Q2. The agency expended 41% of the approved operating budget, and we will have a more detailed summary at the next board meeting, regularly scheduled board meeting, as Ruben has an opportunity to settle in and have a little bit more than 2 weeks to get oriented. We did provide you with our operating under. Item F.1.2 is a review of the board meeting at the end of Q2. And finally, F.1.3, we did not have any material changes for contracts or goods or services, so there is nothing under that tab. And I'm here for any questions.
So you're enjoying it?
What is your, I don't know, how is your background, where are you from?
Good morning, one and all, the board. Once again, my name is Ruben Liao. My background is close to 27 years with state. Previously, I was a budget analyst with Higher Education Coordinating Board. I was there approximately 9 years. Prior to that, I was budget analyst at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Prior to that, I was an appropriation control officer with the Controller's Office. And some of my assigned agencies were, it wasn't pharmacy, but it was that. So I'm familiar with Article 8 bill patterns. And prior to that, I dealt with taxes for 9 years before that.
We are very, very glad to have you. Any questions for?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to go to F.1.4.
This is your update on the legislative appropriations request. We are still in the middle of session. So HB1 is our general appropriations bill. It's been moving through the legislature. Both the House and Senate versions of HB1 funded statewide integration and NARC's PRP are dedicated. So that means, assuming all things stay the same, those would be coming from licensing. Very exciting news for us. The House version of HB1 appropriates approximately an additional $13.2 billion to us. The House version includes salary increases for employees, our FTE requests, salary increase, litigation costs, database updates, licensing items, and increased PRN costs. So one of our appropriations requests are granted that House version. In the Senate version, it approximately an additional $8.6 million less than the House version. The Senate version only has $120,000 for salary increases, and it's for specific groups of employees. It's a good job. It doesn't include any of our FTE requests, but it does include our requests for litigation costs, database updates, and legacy items, and increased PRN and BGC costs. Now, the way this works is we've got the two versions. So now the House and Senate are in conference committee, and so we're going to get there. We don't really see what happens in conference committee, so we just have to wait and see what comes out of that. So that's where we're at right now, is waiting to see what comes out of conference committee. Given how much was in the House version of HB1, it seems like a lot of our requests are still on the table. So we'll see what they say.
questions for me? And just to put it on your radar, so our August meeting, then we will look specifically at license. All right. With that, we will go down to F.4.
Okay, good morning again. So currently you have, I'm going to just review briefly the PMP stat sheet that you've been provided. We are actually currently undergoing a data migration. So for this stat sheet, dispensation counts were not available, and it will be updated, and that should be by the end of this week. We have, for this quarter, 178,797 registered users of the PMP. 63.4 million total PMP searches were conducted. And of those, 50.58 million searches were conducted in an integrated system. I'd also like to go ahead and provide an update on the pharmacist mandate PMP lookup audits. Currently, PMP has been short-staffed, so we did conduct audits just on a smaller scale for dates in this quarter. We conducted 150 audits, and of those 150, there were 11% that the mandated lookup was not performed. 17%, there was a mandated lookup not performed, but there was a documented exception. And 72%, there was a mandated lookup performed in compliance with the law. And that's the information that I have to share, and just also update you on our staffing. I have been currently been in the process of conducting interviews and hope to be fully staffed by the end of the month.
Could I ask you, on 11% not performed, what's the root cause there?
Oversight, and when we call and talk to them, I think it's just a reminder to be more vigilant about looking at the patient's report.
So this group was still educational?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions? And with that, we will go to F.5, which is our report. With SOAH hearings and other report actions. So Megan, you want to walk us through this? It's a shorter list, y'all.
It is. We're getting a shorter list. It's exciting. So first up, we have the hearing appeal. You've heard about this one for the past couple of years. This is the case where two physicians sued TSPP and TMP regarding the prohibition for physician dispensing for office practices. There was a favorable ruling from the district court that dismissed the case, but the plaintiffs appealed to the Third Court of Appeals in Austin. An attorney from the Solicitor General's office and was appointed to handle the case in court. On January 25th, the Third Court of Appeals affirmed the trial court's order. But on April 10th, the plaintiffs filed a petition for review of the Texas Supreme Court. So waiting to see what happens with that. And then next we have Lumen Pharmaco LLC and Jonah Russian. You've heard of this one before. This case was in federal district court. The pharmacy that Lumen Pharmaco owns, along with Jonah Russian PIC, had an IC back in March of 2021 regarding alleged non-therapeutic dispensing. They chose not to enter into the proposed agreed board order with the IC, and board staff filed and served notice of hearing at the State Office of Administrative Hearings. That SOAH hearing occurred in October. The lawsuit alleged that the red flag package rule was discriminatory and the unlawful administration of disciplinary proceedings. An attorney from the Attorney General's office was also appointed to handle this case. On June 16th, the OAG filed a motion to dismiss. In July, the plaintiffs filed a response brief, and the OAG filed a reply brief. And on March 30th, the court dismissed the case. Notably, the plaintiffs' claims for money damages against the board members in their individual
then we have Life Care RX LLC. The pharmacy and the PIC filed a petition to appeal the board orders that were entered last May. The Travis County District Court, attorney from the Attorney General's office, has been appointed to handle this case. In August of last year, the OAG filed a plea to the jurisdiction request for hearing an original answer. There have been no updates since that happened. And that's all of our cases.
Now we're gonna leave it with you at F.6, which is the update on the legislative session.
So the chart that you have behind F6 was up to date as of Friday. As you know, things move quickly, so it might not be up to date today, but that's what we have to go with. That chart doesn't have things related to agency operations and HR and that kind of stuff. It focuses more on the practice areas. So if board members are interested in any of those other topics, let us know. We'll send you those bills that we're tracking as well. I thought I'd briefly go over some of the bills relating to pharmacy practice that have had some movement behind them. So if you're looking at the chart, HB 1105 updates the definition of the practice of pharmacy to include ordering or administering an immunization or vaccination to a patient who is at least 3 years of age, or if the patient is younger than 3 years of age and is referred to a pharmacist by physician administering immunization or vaccination to a patient under the physician's written protocol. That one would require TSBP to specify a condition under which the pharmacy may order or administer immunization or vaccination with certain requirements. We have HB 1771, which requires each agency with regulatory authority over a health professional providing telemedicine, teledentistry, or telehealth service to adopt rules necessary to standardize formats and retention of records related to patients' consent to treatment, data collection, and data sharing. HB 2088 provides that an emergency refill of insulin may exceed a 30-day supply of the smallest available package exceeds a 30-day supply, and provides that TSBP may discipline an applicant for holder of pharmacy technician or training registration for engaging in fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation and practicing as a pharmacy technician or pharmacy technician trainee. You may recognize those as some of our cleanup items that we have put out there. HB 2411 authorizes a pharmacist to dispense an opioid antagonist to a school district, open enrollment, charter school, or private school without requiring identifying information relating to the user. HB 2891 provides that a pharmacist may dispense glucagon, I have no idea if I'm saying that, glucagon, there we go, medication to a school district, open enrollment, charter school, or private school without requiring the name or any other identifying information relating to the user. HB 3338 provides that a pharmacist may dispense an opioid antagonist to an institution of higher education without requiring the name or other identifying information relating to the user. HB 4058 authorizes a pharmacist to dispense an opioid antagonist to a school district, open enrollment, charter school, private school, or institution of higher education without requiring the name or any other identifying information related to the user. HB 4166 provides that a donated prescription drug may be accepted or dispensed under Chapter 442 of the Health and Safety Code if the drug is in the original, unopened, sealed, and tamper-evident bottle or unit dose packaging. The difference there is that that current program only allows it for unit dose packaging, so it would exceed it a little bit at pass. Senate Bill 250 prohibits for the purpose of transitioning a child's biological sex or affirming a child's perception of the child's sex, supplying puberty-blocking medication to stop or delay normal puberty, supraphysiologic doses of testosterone to females, or supraphysiologic doses of estrogen to males, and requires a state regulatory agency with jurisdiction over the healthcare provider to revoke the license of the healthcare provider who is determined to be in violation. SB 294 updates the education code to state that a pharmacist may dispense epinephrine auto-injector or medication for respiratory distress to a school district, open enrollment charter school, or private school without requiring the name or any other identifying information relating to the user. SB 422 requires a state agency to recognize the out-of-state license of a military service member and authorize the member to engage in an occupation if the member is currently licensed in good standing by another jurisdiction with substantially equivalent requirements. SB 1029 provides that a physician or healthcare provider who provides a gender modification treatment is liable to the patient for malpractice and strictly liable for medical, mental health, and pharmaceutical costs, including procedure reversal costs for the life of the patient. And SB 2173 requires TSBP to implement by rule a prescription drug safe disposal pilot program with certain requirements for a pharmacy to participate in the program. Requires TSBP to pay certain costs and perform certain community outreach activities, and provides that the pilot program and corresponding chapter would expire September 1, 2029. Again, these are all just ones that have had some movement. It doesn't mean that they're going to pass. It gives you an idea of what could potentially happen. The last day for House committees to report on House bills is May 8th, which is coming up soon. And as we all know, May 29th is last day of session. Questions?
I don't have any questions, but I think it's important that our pharmacists and technicians be involved in the process going on right now. There's several events going on this week. I encourage participation from everybody. I know that we have limitations as a board of what we can do, but I'm asking, everyone to try to participate one way or another. I think our voices should be heard by legislators one way or another. So if I can do that, there's activities going on this week that we're doing. And I think reach out to the organizations or associations if you want to participate.
All right, the next on our agenda involves next week, which 4 of us are going to NABP, and there will be a number of resolutions that will be there that have been submitted by NABP. And as voting representative, I would like to be able to take your thoughts with me and be able to know where you want our votes to go. So the first resolution comes from District 1, and it involves point of care testing, CLIA wave test, and the pharmacist to be able to, on a CLIA wave test, be able to treat. Again, this won't have anything to do with our rules. This is just how we want to vote within NABP. Thoughts, questions? So then I'll ask, are those in favor of voting affirmatively for District 1? I can see a show of hands. Any opposed?
I think that one's particularly important in the future. A lot of pharmacies, the point of care testing, so future everyone taking time to review that.
All right, District 2 has brought forth a task that they're looking for a task force on examination limits. This is co-supported by District 4, and this will sound a little bit familiar. It was noted that pharmacist applicants have failed the NABP or MPJ multiple times, and they have to petition the state board for approval to sit for the exam after multiple times. So we've had a number of individuals recently that have made that petition, and we have requested that NABP allow them to do so. So what they would like is they would like for NABP to convene a task force to examine the topic of pharmacist applicant approval and remediation following multiple failed attempts at the NABP board and the JE, which will allow members to experience overseeing investigative activities related to these topics, and other stakeholders to develop suggested guidelines and objective tools that may be used by member state boards of pharmacy. So it's really looking at the process and maybe giving some guidelines to boards as to how that process should look like. Questions, discussion? More than 5. So they would give some guidelines.
I think there's a lot of more concern about that last couple of years, right? And I think there's a lack of alignment across. So I think this is what this is, to a task force to review.
Yeah, it's just a task, this would be just a task force to review and then possibly give some suggested guidelines and objective tools. Sorry. Those in favor? Any opposed? All right, as Jenny alluded, there are points on here. So they actually, with co-supported by districts 1 and 4, have one on Drug Supply Chain Security Act Education and Compliance Assessment. So there, it says, whereas suspect products are defined by Title II Drug Supply Chain Security Act, we'll get that as DSCSA, and of the Drug Quality and Security Act poses risk to public safety. Currently, there are several NABP programs that assess compliance. What they're resolving is that they would like to continue educating board members. They want NABP to continue educating board members of pharmacy about the upcoming DSCSA requirements and develop tools to assist board members of pharmacy to further educate licensees and patients while assessing compliance, including modifying pharmacy inspection blueprint to assess pharmacy compliance with traceability requirements. So they want NABP to develop an inspection blueprint for wholesale distributors and third-party logistics providers. And then they want NABP to collaborate with the board's pharmacy to increase the utilization of interoperability networks by state regulators and prescription drug supply chains. So it's really looking at the current blueprint and really being able to develop some tools that NABP would then have for us. Questions on that? Comments? All those in favor are yes. Any opposed? All right, and then they have increased access to orphanage. It was co-supported by District 1. I think that this goes in line with some of the legislation we currently have. They're really looking for NABP to collaborate with DEA and other applicable government agencies and professional associations to address barriers so that there's increased access to the patients. We're seeing it legislatively. I think this is a easy one for questions. So it's like it's Narcan. That's what you would normally when you're. Oh, sorry. You're right. Buprenorphine. So it's an antagonist. So, but it basically, it would basically allow pharmacists to dispense. The way that they're looking at it is to obtain data from the 2000 waivers, provide treatment, to look at the restriction of patients, the exclusion of qualified providers. So it's really increasing access so that there's not a barrier to treatment.
So currently with like opioid use disorder, a lot of people have to go to clinics to get their buprenorphine, which is what helps them with withdrawal and sustaining their remission from addiction. And it's very challenging to access it. And so this would open up the accessibility, including coming from pharmacies.
And there's been some good changes, like they used to have this ex-DEA, and that barrier is removed. So physicians had to have special DEA to prescribe. So it's really just making it more accessible, more mainstream, and maybe taking a little bit of the stigma out, so that patients can get treatment. Questions here? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, so District 8, which is co-supported by District 7, has one to identify challenges and align renewal cycles across the country for individuals and businesses. You know, every state's a little bit different. If you look at our neighbors to the east, they all do it on the exact same month, and they do it once a year. As opposed to ours is on our birth month and every other. So what they're looking at is for NABP to work with its member boards and other stakeholders to identify challenges, to align renewal cycles across the country or in as many states as possible. Thoughts on this?
The challenges, I mean, we want to find out. We're not going to move our stuff to accommodate that.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, you know, I mean, just in talking with Louisiana, I mean, and looking at the workload of staff, I mean, can you imagine everybody renewing the exact same month once a year, you know? I mean, I think that if we would lose efficiency. So, I mean, we can vote yes, but they gotta come to our side.
Yeah, we'll take into to ours. It's not practical, so, you know, it's nice, but.
So based upon the discussion, you know, if that happens that day when we go through this resolution, I mean, it's not gonna hurt to allow them to identify the challenges, but we know kind of where we stand. So do we vote yes or no?
You're not deciding anything.
We're not deciding anything.
So, I mean, you could knock yourself out.
All right, so Rick says, let them knock their socks off or self out, which I take it as a yes. So all those in agreement with the yes? Any opposed? All right. All right. There are. So the Arizona State Board of Pharmacy has a resolution regarding expanding pharmacy technician seats on state boards of pharmacy. I think this is a very easy one for us. They want to encourage and have NABP assist state boards of pharmacy to add a pharmacy technician member to every board of pharmacy. And I would say that we would be very lacking in our representation and knowledge base without Brad here. So I will let you know how I feel. But I think that technicians should always be on there. But this is the pleasure report. All those in favor of a yes here? All right, and then North Dakota also has a resolution that they put forward, and it's to create an industry standard for pharmacy technician scope of practice and entry level requirements to support state affordability. So there's a lot to this one. They want to look at scope of practice, which they did look at. The amendments that have allowed pharmacy technicians to provide childhood vaccines, and basically, everything that they did during COVID to help us with workflow and step up to, providers. So what their resolution is that they're looking for NABP to review the work within the profession that's been completed thus far, identify the baseline knowledge standard for pharmacy technician, and then to convene a task force to review current state regulations and industry standard recommendations, considering an expanding goal. So their initial part of this is really around PrEP Act and immunizations, but what the resolution is just really to convene this task force review currently what current states have, and then be able to move forward. So again, it's just a task force, and of course, with us, it could be changing, so. Hopefully that's. So do I hear a yes, no, questions?
I'll be supporting the future of pharmacies, leveraging supportive personnel and making sure that they have good training and planning of their roles. So I think it's a good task force.
All right. Those in agreement with support? Those are current resolutions that have come forward. But again, I thought it was important that we have that on the agenda so that I could see and for those who know where everybody. All right, with that, we're going to go to F.8, which I'm going to turn it over to Megan to talk about what we had asked the staff to do as far as delivery and shipping conditions.
Thank you. So as Julie said at the last board meeting, you requested more information on this discussion item and for a draft of what rules this might look like. And Yvonne and Mary worked on this information for you. So behind F.8, you can see a rule draft based on the direction that you provided at the last board meeting. A Southwestern Oklahoma State University study on the exposure of drugs to excessive temperature during the mail order pharmacy process, a University of Utah assessment of unrefrigerated shipping methods, and an NABP report from the task force on mail delivery prescriptions. You can see the rule draft would create a new 291.12 new rule for delivery of prescription drugs. It applies to the delivery of prescription drugs by Class A, AS, E, or ES pharmacies as provided for in Rule 291.9. It starts off with delivery by mail. And on line 11, it requires delivery in accordance with the standards of the manufacturer or USP. On line 14, pharmacies must use tamper-proof and tamper-evident mailers that are resistant to tearing and moisture. On line 16, pharmacies must ensure the integrity of any drug requiring temperature control other than room temperature, and the pharmacies shall use temperature tags, time temperature strips, insulated packaging, gel ice packs, or a combination as necessary. On line 21, patient or patient's agent must be provided a method to notify the pharmacy of any irregularity in the delivery. On line 27, if the drug is compromised during delivery, the pharmacy must replace the drug by next day delivery or immediately contact the patient's prescriber to arrange for a 7-day supply to be dispensed by the pharmacy of the patient or patient agent's choice. On line 32, the pharmacy must not deliver by mail a drug that in the professional opinion of a pharmacist may be clinically compromised by delivery by mail. On line 35, it turns to delivery by a pharmacy employee. And on line 38, the pharmacy is responsible for any problems in the delivery, and the delivery must be on a continuous route from the pharmacy to the patient or agent. On line 41, the drug must be maintained within the manufacturer recommended temperature range until the delivery is complete. On line 43, the rule turns to all deliveries. And on line 45, the pharmacy must comply with the counseling requirements. On line 47, the pharmacy must notify the patient or agent of the delivery of the drug, provide information about proper storage, and document the notification. On line 52, the pharmacy must require the patient or agent to sign for delivery if the drug is reasonably likely to be compromised or left unattended. On line 57, the pharmacy must provide the patient or agent with procedures to follow if the drug does not arrive in a timely manner, or if the integrity of the drug or packaging has been compromised. On line 61, the pharmacy must maintain records of when a drug was sent to a patient or agent, patient complaints and audits on the timeliness of deliveries, drugs compromised in delivery, and the failure of a patient to receive a prescription, drug delivery. And on line 66, pharmacies must comply with state and federal laws and rules for controlled substances.
All right. This is the information that from our speaker from last time and, the information that came back out of our district meetings that we looked at. So there's the studies in there, there's information on temperature tracking. There's several things that could occur with this. Obviously this is a discussion item, so we can discuss it and decide to wait until next time to propose. We can do nothing with it. There is proposed language there. Staff went really did a good job of bringing something forward. So we could go ahead and make that a proposed, which then takes it through the process. Or again, wait proposed for next time.
What topics is it?
So when we were at District 6, 7, and 8, this was one of the topics that came up was, temperature control, instability, that, things going through the mail and getting hot. And at our last board meeting, if you remember, we had that, the lady came and spoke and told us about her child with, suppressives and what occurred with her when things going through mail order. And so it came up as a discussion item that, from a public safety standpoint, was there something that we needed to do to address or look at the issue? And, were there any measures that needed to be taken? And so, as Megan said, one of the things that came up was, should we look at what Arkansas was doing? They already have language there. Oklahoma, I know, did just adopt. So it was really, just this came up as a discussion point at a district meeting. Is this something that we need to look at based on, somebody said, our bipolar weather? Just the heat that's out there in the mail. Cold weather.
Yeah, I think what this did is, I think it was a very nice job of tightening up some of the ambiguity, so I appreciate the staff put together the language. It said 2 questions on 2 separate parts of it. Like, I guess, section line 27. A little confused with this, arrange for a prescription for a 7-day supply, you have to replace. I mean, if something's been compromised, should it be replaced? I'm trying to understand where we came up with that 7-day supply.
I believe that was mimicking Arkansas's language. So again, this is just like a play draft, so anything that you'd like to change, we can have them change.
So if they get a 30-day supply, it needs to be replaced.
I think that what this allowed was if the pharmacy didn't have medication in stock, that another pharmacy could be used.
I think it just says there's compromise during the delivery. Replacement, I guess, yeah.
Shall replace or arrange for replacement.
I think it's, we arrange for replacement. I think that's more fair. I mean, I understand the circumstances, but I'd be that patient after only get 7 days worth of something.
I think that the intent is not just the 7 days.
I think it's
Yeah,
for a
it's
bridge.
to make sure that
Okay.
there's a bridge in
Okay.
there so that they're not out of compliance if they can't automatically replace it. They can find somebody to do that 7
Okay.
day or if they only have enough for 7 days, they can do 7 days and then still give them, it says that it has to be done next day.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just to make sure that the patient's taken care of.
The other question is, line 35, delivery by employee or common carrier? Is that what we're just limiting employee or is this?
So there's different sections in there, sorry, my computer's
But if you look, above, there's a section that's on common carriers, US mail and all that, and there are specific requirements to that. And then there's this on 35, this delivery by pharmacy employee, and there's specific requirements on that. Then I believe if you scroll down, on D, on line 43, is for all deliveries. So there are some that are just targeted to the type of delivery that's happening. So why don't we just put this, close it, like, having to get feedback and comment from
All right, so we have a motion.
Can I amend
You
that?
can amend it because it's yours.
Amend it to, on the section that Ruth was talking about on placement, to edit that. A prescription drug is in any way compromised during the delivery, the pharmacy shall replace the drug or arrange to have it replaced, to transfer or. Can I ask a clarifying question? So right now, it's, shall replace the drug to be delivered by next day delivery. Do you want to put a time frame on that? No, because that might not be necessary. They may not need it that next day, and that's a huge step on a pharmacy that they doesn't want to put pressure on. What if the patient does need it the next day? Do you want something? Don't we specify?
I think they do have, you have language here on how to resolve an issue, right? So that could be part of their.
It's not our original language. I mean, it's all this is all new.
Yeah, all of
So didn't we have something in our original language
I don't think so. I think it just stated that they got policy procedures, but it wasn't spelled out very well. A little more detail.
So we have a motion with an amendment of lines. Here we go. My eyes are good. 27 through 31. Removing the next day requirement unless needed. Do I have a second to that? I have a second from Lori. All those in favor of moving this forward as proposed, so if you comment, say aye. Any opposed?
You hate to add lines of more rules, in general. Yeah. But I think it's becoming a bigger issue with access to clarity. So this is why.
All right, so next on our agenda is F.9, and it's concerning compounding and revised USP 795 and 797. So at this time, what I'm proposing to the board is with these revisions of USP going forward, that we ask the professional organizations to submit names for a new committee. And then structure it so that the new committee has two subcommittees under it. One that will look at 795 and one that will look at 797. I think there's a different skill set there, and that will allow, both groups to look specifically at that USB. And then, my thought is, with y'all's agreement, that they would start a meeting together, split into their subcommittees, and then we want it to be collaborative and to share, at the end. But this would allow, the individuals that have been on the compounding committee have served for a really long time, and they've done a great job, which is why I want to make sure we thank them early in the meeting, when we would normally have had that before. But I think this allows all of the organizations to put forth some names of new individuals that really commitment to serve, and then it would allow us to have their knowledge and expertise forward in those meetings.
to meet virtually, aren't they?
Yes.
And they could, as a group, decide if they, would want to be all in a room. Sometimes when you're starting a new committee, they may initially say that or we may initially ask them that, maybe the first meeting is in person, so that they have, that connection with each other. We've all been on Zoom meetings where you kind of go awry, talking over people or whatever. So we put guardrails on that as we take it forward.
And how would the names be submitted, or how do we get that together?
So we would ask the professional organizations, TSHB, TPA, TFDS, our independent groups, which are escaping my mind at the moment, to put forth some names. And then we would be able, and individuals, if they, what they would like to serve, set forward, we then look at those names and come up with what that can look like.
What would the effective date of these changes in the minutes? Is this something that we can get here very quickly?
I believe so. Thoughts on that structure?
I share her concern, just the timing is unusual, trying to go with that we only want to.
Is there even a date on the letter or notification? How would you, when you talk to these other agencies, other groups?
For the names of who they name.
Or we could ask, I want to make sure we get word out. I mean, maybe we say 3 weeks from now, have names submitted, then we possibly can get something.
Or they said 97 more.
And that's why I think it'll be, from an efficiency standpoint, it would be better to have them split in half and be able to look at them.
So are you, looking at a certain number of folks in each?
I mean, I think we'll have to. If it gets too big, then you're not gonna get enough. It just won't be.
I'm not sure how many were on the last one. It was quite, I don't know.
It was quite large. It was large. I think it was like 20 people.
Yeah.
But that's just, I don't know that that's an accurate number, so don't hold to that, but it was a large group. I mean, in my mind, and y'all can put forth recommendations, I mean, I would think, yeah.
Are you thinking a smaller group for the last one? I'm not entirely sure how many we want, but I'm personally looking for a lot of, it was not much.
I mean, and maybe it's 8 to 10 on each side. But we need, quality individuals, and that's where we'll look at, people like Randy and his predecessor, or his new, since he's stepped off, Debbie and her group. Debbie, I think you just walked into the room, so we're gonna form a new compounding group.
Oh, yeah.
But we want subcommittees within the group, so we need names for 795 and for 797. Because we want to create some efficiency, and we know that there's a different skill set with those. So, I think, those are the individuals we would do to break forth some names. I think that's great. And I guess before we take action, we do have a public comment on this. As I looked up and called on Randy's name. So Randy, you want to come forward and introduce yourself and.
Certainly. Good morning. Didn't get this submitted electronically in time, so I figured I'd give a paper copy. Thank you. Absolutely agree with the, sorry? Oh, certainly, sorry. Randy Martin, I'm with the Texas Society of Health System Pharmacists. I'm also a sterile compounding pharmacist in Fort Worth, Texas. Did want to just comment on some of the urgent items. Great to hear that there's the urgency behind getting the group formed and started. Just to iterate the timeline, implementate or official date for all the new chapters, 795, 797, 800 is November of this year. There has been discussion that Joint Commission will hold off on holding us to those standards till January of next year, which is very helpful, and hopefully we stick to that. There are some items, and I've kind of bulleted out the basic changes, but the second bulleted list that I provided you are probably the most pressing changes that we would be happy to provide details on, or if this group could form quickly to address these first, because they're items that are in direct conflict. So probably the worst one is number 7 on that list. So as it stands right now, pharmacy rules state that we need to glove in the buffer room, which is the most inner room of the sterile compounding facility. According to the USP standards, I have to glove in the same room that I'm doing all my other garbage, which will be on the clean side of the ante room. And so in that scenario, it's a great example of how these standards are in absolute direct conflict. And I will either have a warning from the state board, or I will not pass my joint commission accreditation. And so there are a few others where definitions are simplified. Probably the most challenging thing, I think, from the rulemaking standpoint is that they completely abandon the taxonomy of low, medium, high microbial contamination risk. It is completely abandoned. It's not just renamed. It's a complete recategorization of how we classify CSPs. The good news is that could provide an opportunity for the board to simplify their rules. The other item that, and I know that the main focus of the group is 795 and 797, because the current board rules were very much informed, greatly informed, I'd say, by the USP 2008 version. It did include elements of hazardous drugs. And now that USP element completely, the USP 797 completely farms out all hazardous drug compounding to 800. And so.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there.
Sure.
So 800 is not on the agenda, so we can't talk about 800.
USP 797 references 800?
Okay, I'll give you a little bit. Don't go too far.
Sure.
I gotta keep myself honest here, you know?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And so one of the big challenges there is focusing on the logistical aspect for these pharmacies and the cost to these pharmacies. Is that there are provisions in our current code related to the low and medium risk that you can't prepare non-sterile and sterile compounds in the same space. And that makes sense. And it really, actually, the intent is good. But what happens is if I'm preparing sterile compounds, if I'm preparing an item that is deemed hazardous under those USP standards, I have to be in a special room. And the standards as they're written allow me to prepare non-sterile and sterile hazardous, as long as I do a lot of procedures in between to assure the safety of the product being prepared. So right now, though, I could be in adherence with those standards, but I would still be in violation of state rules. And so the alternative to stay in compliance with USP 797's reference to 800 and meet state board rules, most, of the hospital pharmacies out there will have to build an entirely new room to be able to do non-sterile and sterile compounding. And those rooms cost anywhere from about $250,000 to about $1 million, depending on the size and the scope. And so we don't like that to be considered, those elements that are impacted in the rules that have now been referenced over to another chapter with that task force.
I think Randy brings up a great point, and this may be on the line, but how is enforcement handling this now? As they're doing surveys, hospitals and others are making an attempt to comply with this, which is previously was in direct violation of our current laws, our current requirements. How is enforcement? Have you had any experiences with enforcement?
We had an experience with one of the hospitals in our health system related to what I was just discussing, which is the hazardous prep. So they're trying to be in compliant with the USP 795 and 797 references to USP 800. They're trying to be in compliant with that, but then they actually did get a warning concerning the fact that they were doing sterile and non-sterile compounding in the same space. And so they're under a time crunch to build a new room, get it pressurized, and have a whole new hood brought in and all those things. So it's pretty challenging. Thank you all very much.
So back to our original discussion. I guess we'll go ahead and just take a motion for the formation of the new committee. Can you make that motion? Ronnie, a second.
Aye.
Move forward, that communication outcome. All right, so Ms. Caroline, we had asked also as a discussion item from last time to have some information on the supervising positions for mid-level practitioners. Yes.
All right, we're at F.10, the agenda, and yeah, it's my pleasure to present this chart. Ben Santana, staff pharmacist with the board, prepared this, and it gives you kind of a regulatory landscape. We focus just on advanced practice nurses and physician assistants because those are the mid-levels practitioners that are recognized for Texas for the purposes of creating this chart. So the top part is a summary for the advanced practice nurses listed first, and then for the physician assistant listed secondly, and then it goes into a state-by-state comparison for what regulation is specific to that jurisdiction. So you can see Texas does require the supervising physician information for both advanced practice nurses and also for physician assistants. And on page 18, that's detailed in the PDF. That's where Texas appears in the alphabetical listing of the chart. And this is statutory. It's in the Occupations Code and the Medical Practice Act section. And it does require the supervising information to be on the prescription board of physicians by those mid-level practitioners. This does kind of leave Texas in the minority across the nation. There's a lot of movement out there, even for states that are still requiring it for continued legislation. They'll move that requirement into their own practice arena, especially for the prescription board.
So it's nothing that we could change it after the legislatively done, but it is really good information.
It was very helpful because we get this question a lot. So for staff, it was very helpful to kind of understand the framework behind it across the nation. So.
Any questions for Caroline?
Great work.
Yes. Ben did a great job. I mean, please let them know how much we appreciate the work that you've done on this.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure to present it. He did do a fantastic job compiling this information.
I do have a question, just curious. I see Texas, yes, yes, and then Utah, no. What are the advantages if there is no supervision?
I mean, I think it does create, an additional restriction on being able to dispense that prescription. If it's not on the prescription, it creates that having to go back and obtain that information to annotate the prescription or include it. And then, of course, if it's not even required, as you mentioned, that could be a real barrier.
So I'll give you a real life scenario. So this question came up with central process. A lot of company central processing is done in, probably another state, or maybe it is here in our state. And so as they have people that are typing up prescriptions, and they don't put that added information on there, pharmacists in our state are continually pushing it back to them to say, hey, you need to make sure that you include, that supervising physician's name, and they come back and their comment is, why are y'all the only ones requiring this? And so it makes it difficult for them, and it's just that added bit of information. And so that's how the question kind of came up. But the reality is that there's nothing we can do. I mean, it's going to require legislation. But we are, as Caroline said, fast become possibly one of the states that only have that.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Caroline. All right. Megan has F.11 and F.12. So that's expiration date of Pharmacist-Interns and some ratios. Through those.
So for F11, at the last board meeting, you requested that we ask the licensing team if the internship hour expiration date was an issue that they see often. And we did speak with them, and they said that in the few instances where this has come up, they feel that allowing the internship hours to be used for 3 years would have resolved that issue. So it doesn't come up very often, but they do think this would resolve the times that they have seen. We did go ahead and draft an amendment to 283.4 that would reflect this change. So on line 86, you can see the update in yellow that would allow internship hours to be used for no longer than 3 years from the date the internship is completed. And then you also see there are green highlights in there. Those are the amendments that were adopted earlier.
So background, if you can remember, the young lady that came and spoke to us, and because of some extenuating circumstances with her husband's health, her intern hours were going to expire if she did not get things lined up in a timely fashion. And Lori has asked that this kind of be brought forward to see if there is anything we could do for future individuals, and it really happens very often, which the answer was no, it really doesn't. But in this handful of cases, it would make a difference if it went to 3. So here's because staff did a great job of knowing that this was already there as proposed with others. We one of a number of things. We can discuss it, let it go. We can leave what we've already done and bring this back as proposed next time, or we could go ahead and move forward and amend what we already have.
You would propose.
You would propose this, right, but it would be part of our proposal for next time.
Okay, go to
If you propose this amendment, it's going to be similar to what Barry was talking about earlier, where instead of holding things up, so I'm not using my words correctly. If you propose this amendment, the adoption from earlier will go forward,
right,
and then we'll have to wait until that adoption is effective to submit this proposal. So depending on the timeline, it could be that we could bring it back for adoption in August. If that timeline doesn't work out right, it would come back for adoption in November. So it depends on how long it takes for the other adoption to go back before we can submit a proposal to that same goal. Does that make sense?
Only to hold off and review on.
Well, you adopted the last one, so we can't amend that adoption because this is just a proposal. If you had just done a proposal, you could have done that. But what you did earlier this morning was an adoption.
So what is the budget?
That one said.
Propose it for proposal. Propose it for proposal. Okay.
All right, so we have a motion by Rick to make this a proposed. Do we have a second? Second from Ian. All those in favor?
And as Julie said, I also have F.12, which is the discussion item on central fill pharmacy ratios. So you may remember there was a request at the last board meeting to look at potentially changing the tech ratio for pharmacies performing central fill. Staff has looked into this and has determined that it would be very difficult to do this without creating a new class of pharmacy specifically for central fill. Centralized prescription dispensing is a service that can be provided by Class A, Class C, or Class D pharmacies. Under the rules, these pharmacies are still allowed to perform in the normal manner of their pharmacy class. So it becomes difficult to regulate it, really. There's no special designation to denote that they are central fill. Under the rules, the pharmacies could go back and forth between performing central fill and performing their normal class operations. So I don't really know how compliance would know what ratio they would be operating under. I don't know how they would denote that. And I know there is that DEA registration, but the issue with relying on the DEA registration is that pharmacies aren't required to do controlled substances. If they aren't doing controlled substances, they don't have the DEA registration, so that's not really a solution for us either. So we basically ran into a wall. And we don't think that it was the board's intention to create a new class of pharmacy, so.
Questions, discussion?
Yeah, fortunately, Janu couldn't be here today. He was excited, but he couldn't start the central fill situation. So without changing the ratio would require a change to require, you're saying, a new set of class. It wouldn't, it would say, go one any other. It would create a problem for compliance, you think?
Well, the way the rules are now, it's a service that specific classes of pharmacy can provide. And so there's not really a way to change the ratio of a pharmacy while they're just performing one service. There's not a way for, like, the compliance inspector goes out, how do they know which ratio applies for that day? Or really, even if you could change throughout the day. So then as a PIC, I think it would be difficult as well. So unless there was a special designation of some sort, and then you no longer allow that flexibility in switching, it's difficult to regulate.
Or removal of the person.
Right, that's true.
Take care of that.
If you removed all ratios except for the statutorily imposed one, then it resolves that issue as well.
If my follow-up, I guess I might understand, you said switching between one thing or another in that time, what are they stay in the same process the whole time, they switch something different.
Well, under the rules, they're not required to only perform central fill services, right? So if you're a Class A pharmacy and you're performing a central fill service, there's a different ratio for that. But then you switch back over to your normal Class A dispensing, there's a different ratio for this. That switching back and forth, there's not a way to denote which one you're supposed to be, which ratio you're supposed to be operating under at any given time in the day. So if an inspector goes in, there's not really a way for them to say, you were supposed to be under this ratio at this time. There's not a way to enforce the ratios really.
I mean, there's no way to change any of the licensing for that pharmacy. You're saying, hey, this one is a subset.
That's the new class of
That
pharmacy.
would be a new class of pharmacy.
I'm sure he'll follow up with you. Talk to the project. Appreciate that consideration.
So there's a potential, I would say, that this could come back as another discussion.
How to create that other class, that's what the board require. You could create a new class of pharmacy. You could also remove all the tech ratios. These are all options available to you.
It may just be something that he brings up to an agenda item next time.
All right, so the last thing in F, and then we'll go ahead and break for lunch, is a discussion concerning the printing of the actual pharmacy license certificate. So we contract out with Goodwill, not Goodwill, if you think of it, but a Goodwill. And they're a hub for us, so we used to print our pharmacy licenses, our pharmacist and technician licenses, and as you know, we've gone to printing those ourselves. And so the question has come up as to the ability to, just allow our pharmacist license to be printed. And decreasing that expense for the board, one of the positive things. I mean, the other thing is when you're issued your license, a lot of times, especially if you're in a new building, a new construction, you're waiting on the US mail to deliver it. And that can be a little bit of a challenge. And of course, you need your license to apply for your DBA and that process. So it would allow individuals to simply go ahead and print their pharmacy license. And talking with Ms. T in licensing, she says that there's a way that a VO could be set up so that it can plug in, so it would still be, it would still be safe and secure. But it would allow each of us, when we renew our pharmacy licenses, to simply print it up and post. So that bringing this forward as a discussion item to see what the board's thoughts are on this. And then the other side of that. Oh, yeah. Not a problem.
Yeah,
All right, well, then we can bring this would be a proposed rule change. So if everyone is in agreement, and then ask staff for we'll propose rule.
I was gonna say that the Department of Insurance has gone to that too. They don't have any license, you have to print it out. And they stopped sending you, if you're sure your seat credits, you have to just know it now. There's 4 days.
So are there any objections? All right, then we will instruct staff to bring that proposed rule forward. And with that, it is now 11:42. I'm gonna come back at 12:15.